Now let me take you to Washington, D.C., because the IMF is projecting that Ghana's economy should rebound strongly from next year following the current recovery being recorded. The fund is therefore projecting 4.4% end-of-year growth for the country. Joy Business' George Wiafe joins me live from Washington, D.C. with the latest on this matter. And George, it's really good to see you from the other side of the world. And it appears the IMF is just upbeat about growth improving, but even inflation. Walk us through what is informing the optimism in the Ghanaian economy from the perspective of the IMF.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better now. Now I can hear you loud and clear. Please go on.
So, Elton, this is based on a research that they put, or a report they put together in terms of their World Economic Outlook report, where they do scenarios on every country that is a member of the IMF. And one can say that when they do the extrapolations on the economy, it appears that the reforms that are taking place in the fiscal area and even monetary area is gradually impacting on the economy. To quote one IMF official who's argued that, listen, all the targets that were set under the fund program, Ghana has actually overmet, if I can use that expression, the targets in terms of growth, the monetary targets. And based on these indicators that they explore, they look at, and that is why they think that growth is going to rebound strongly going into next year. Even government itself was looking at around 2 or 3.3% next year. But it appears that the fund is very, very robust about the economy going forward. And this is hinged on the reforms that are taking place in the various sectors of the economy as a result of the IMF program. And based on all these things, the fund strongly believes that growth will pick up strongly next year and even going into 2026, Elton.
You hear all these nice words, and of course you also do know that we are at this spring meeting to try and see our way clear in terms of assessing the next tranche of the IMF fund to Ghana. And there are some conditions that we must meet, including having that agreement with our external creditors. Can you update us on this matter?
So, Elton, when the team came into town to carry out their second review, one would say that at the staff level, we have completed the second review. Now, what is left for the IMF is to take this report to their management and again to their board for approval in terms of whether indeed we have met all those critical targets under the IMF program. And Elton, the data that the IMF was looking at was ending December. Now, one critical thing that Ghana needs to meet before the staff can take Ghana's report to the board for approval in the disbursement of some $360 million is that memorandum of understanding that we should reach with the bilateral creditors. And this is not the Eurobond holders. This has to do with the multilateral lenders and bilateral creditors. And what we have picked up is that, Elton, that MOU, that deal has been reached with these bilateral creditors. And and this was even reached way back in February. Now, what we understand is that it has to go through the official creditor committee, which involves China, France, and other developed countries. Now, Elton, it has to do with the wording of the statement. It is very important that everything that is put out, all the members on that committee agree in terms of whatever deal that Ghana has reached with the bilateral creditors. And that is why we've seen that delay. So that is the very, very important target that needs to be met before the IMF staff can go to the board. We don't know why that statement has delayed. First, one that they reached in January was the agreement in principle. What we understand now is that that agreement that could lead to the MOU being signed has been reached. So it appears that that critical condition that is needed, we have met it, and the staff can go to the board and present that document. But that is subject to the official creditor committee officially releasing a statement to the IMF that, listen, we are satisfied with the terms that Ghana has proposed in terms of restructuring. They are about $5 billion there. But Elton, the critical concern here, Elton, has to do with the negotiations with the Eurobond holders, or call them commercial creditors. It appears that some groups are not okay with the terms that government presented. But also one critical thing here, Elton, is that whatever agreement that government reaches with these creditors, they need to take it back to the IMF to secure their blessings. It appears that when Ghana took these agreement that they had reached with the Eurobond holders, the fund objected to it. Why? Because, Elton, the main focus of this program is also trying to reduce our debt in the long term.
Right.
So don't get into any commitment in terms of the interest payment, the time it will be paid. That would end up ballooning your debt stock, because by 2028, we're supposed to reduce our debt stock in relation to our GDP to a very significant level. And so the fund actually has objected to those terms. So it looks like Ghana has to go back, rework those terms, and we are picking up is that there could be an agreement in principle reached with these creditors who have their representatives here in Washington, D.C., in terms of reaching a deal that could lead to an MOU before this annual IMF meeting ends here in Washington, D.C., Elton.
So therefore, the revised position of Ghana may find favor with the IMF team.
It appears that, and the IMF has made it clear. Even when the MD was in town, we had a private meeting with her. She stood by her argument is that Ghana should not allow themselves to be arm twisted by these commercial creditors, because it is very, very important that getting to terms or conditions in this loan repayment. And when it comes to the Eurobond holders, you're looking at restructuring about $13.4 billion. And it appears that some of these institutional investors have taken some entrenched position about the haircut that they should take. And also they're even proposing that, listen, we are doing this restructuring now because the economy is not doing well.
Right.
We wanted an insurance where if the economy picks up, then pay us a premium in restructuring these holders. So it appears that there are some concerns with what they are demanding, but government is arguing that before this meeting ends here, they should be able to reach that agreement in principle. That should be the first step. The second step will be the MOU, and then the last step would be signing of that MOU, Elton.
Let me ask you just two quick questions so that I can let you go. Are there special programs for Ghana on the sidelines? And what is the IMF, position on the global economy, seeing how oil is now becoming a tool to further depress a lot of struggling economies, including Ghana?
Let me first talk about the oil projection, because when they launched their economic outlook report, they actually highlighted that, listen, we are projecting that oil could be rising by 15% in terms of the crude price if the current geopolitical tension in the Middle East doesn't ease anytime soon. And that could see a global inflation uptick of about 2%. The fund is warning that, for countries like Ghana that depend heavily on crude prices in terms of finished petroleum products, there are fears that that could derail the current recovery that we are seeing. But when the governor of the Bank of Ghana, during the recent engagement on the staff level agreement, I posed that question to him, and his response was that, listen, we may have seen the worst when it comes to inflation, and going forward, we could see inflation trend down. And that brings me, Elton, to even the IMF itself in their report. They are forecasting that we will get back to that single-digit range of 8% at the end of next year. That doesn't mean that we won't see blips, but it appears that maybe, Elton, if I can choose my words carefully here, we might have seen the worst when it comes to inflation. And because of those reforms and the shock absorbers that is being put in place now, maybe the impact might not be that grave when it comes to inflation in this country going forward.
All right. And I also asked whether there are sideline issues for Ghana in this spring meeting that you can report.
Elton, there are a lot of them. Don't forget that anybody who plays in the finance and economic space, this is the place to be when it comes to all the central bank governors, the multilateral institutions, the bilateral institutions, the institutional investors, the bank CEOs, everyone is here. There are B2B engagement with the IMF MD from the Ghana, that is the Minister of Finance. He will also be engaging, of course, some institutional investors, the multilateral institutions, the World Bank itself as well, and also some of these institutional investors that are even trying to support the Development Bank of Ghana in terms of the long-term funding to unlend commercial banks in the country, Elton.
All right, thank you very much, George Biafre from Washington, D.C. is the IMF World Bank Spring meeting. that is ongoing, and you heard him say that Ghana is hoping to advance its talks with the world, with the IMF, with the aim of securing that tranche, because we needed to meet some conditions, including having a workable, agreements with our external creditors, and that has been worked on. And so the IMF will look at it very carefully. Now, this is the pause here on Joy News. Now,